Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your sun and rising sign horoscopes for the month of October 2020. In this video, we're going to take a look at the earth signs, Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. So I'm going to put the real-time clock up and we will dive in. First, let me just say that this, like a number of other months in 2020, is very potent, and this is thanks to Mars being retrograde in the sign of Aries and creating a massive T-square with the big stellium in Capricorn. We're getting to the grand finale of 2020. It's been a potent year, obviously, but this is arguably next to January, one of the more intense months of the year. And I'll show you why. We're going to start off with Capricorn. So here's how the sequence works. You've got a lot of energy flowing through Aries, through Libra, and through Capricorn this month, your home sign. And here's how it goes. You got the full moon in Aries in your fourth house to start the month. That's Mars's sign, obviously, with Mars retrograde squaring Pluto by the 9th in your home sign of Capricorn. Then by the 13th, the sun in Libra in your 10th house will oppose Mars in Aries in your fourth house. Then you'll have a new moon in Libra in your 10th house by the 16th. And then Mars in Aries, again, in the fourth, will square Jupiter in Capricorn in the first. So between the 1st and the 20th of the month, it's like fireworks. And it's all happening across this 1st, 4th, and 10th house axis. If you are a cardinal sign, this is a big month of change for you. Any cardinal sign, but especially Capricorns, because you have that stellium in Capricorn finally finishing up, by the way, in your first house in the next couple of months, as Jupiter and Saturn are about to finally push off into Aquarius. And that's going to start putting a big emphasis on your second house, money, finances, resources by the end of the year. I would think that this transit would have to do with the prelude to some kind of change that is probably going to have a very beneficial effect by the end of the year by moving into 2021 on finances and money for you. But for right now, the change is very dynamic around the area of home, family, roots, foundation, and your home environment, fourth house. That's where the focus of this month's transits are taking place with Mars retrograde in that house. But it's also a question of what's happening in the workplace with the sun opposing in Libra at the new moon in Libra in the 10th house. There's a new seed being planted there, as there are also concurrent changes happening along in the house of home and family. Not exactly easy with Mars, the god of war, in that house. So potentially some more difficult themes around home, family, living environment, or at least stressful or dynamic, even if they're exciting. And then, of course, this T-squaring energy coming into the first house. The first house, we've been talking about these planets being in your first house for a long time now, but the gist of it is that when planets are making a big deal from the first house, when they're involved in a number of very dynamic transits and they're anchored in your first house, these changes are much more personal. They're much more existential. Who am I? What are my priorities? What are my values? What is my life direction? Where am I going? What decisions am I making right now? And also questions about health and vitality. So it's a very weighty existential moment for Capricorns, where I think also questions about work and career and things happening in the home and family are probably, you might feel like you're carrying a pretty heavy load at the moment around all of this. This month is going to be very dynamic in continuing to focus on these themes. But again, the good news is that you're working through this. Things start to get a lot better around your career next month in November, when Venus finally gets out of her fall and goes into Libra. And then you have essentially Mars in the middle of November turning direct after a long period retrograde. So if you've been battling through something in these areas, home, again, property, roots, family, your work environment, and your sense of identity, health, and especially if you've been feeling like you've been carrying the load somehow, you're at a crossroads, and things are about to shift and change pretty dynamically this month. And by December, you're going to see that there's kind of a new beginning taking place, a new foundation to work from, and it'll probably also bolster you if you've been worried about money or finances or work. There's going to be some new opportunities coming in by the new year. So that's where things are going. Now, the other big series of transits are coming from Mercury in Scorpio, making an opposition to Uranus in Taurus. Well, that is happening on the 7th of the month. Mercury opposes Uranus. Then on the 14th, Mercury will turn retrograde in Scorpio. And then by the 19th, Mercury will oppose Uranus through its retrograde once more. With Mercury retrograde in your 11th house of friends and groups of people, and with Uranus being that god that's sort of disruptive and erratic and unpredictable, but also innovative, I would anticipate the possibility of there being some very interesting, what I would call, generic word, but it's a very accurate word for Uranus, which are breakthroughs, meaning where things have been stagnant or stuck, or where you've been stuck in routine or habit, or where something is old or outdated, there will be some kind of breakthrough. It'll be sort of sudden, maybe unexpected, probably inspiring, but it could also, as these transits do, bring up questions about tradition and the way things have been done in the past versus something new, some new way of doing things. The desire to innovate is going to be very strong this month for you as a Capricorn, and it'll probably play out especially within groups or organizations or a company or among friends or something like that. Could be a great month for something creative in terms of collaboration as well. So those are some of the big themes that I see. The other thing that I would watch for this month, which I find is maybe one of the faster moving transits of the month that I almost didn't include just because it moves pretty quickly through and isn't repeating the same themes and places like the other transits, but Venus is going to be opposite Neptune this month around the 17th of the month, very briefly between the 9th and 3rd houses, which can affect the topics of religion, spirituality, your intellectual life, your mind and your mental or mental emotional landscape. And it may bring up something to do with romance, mysticism, the feminine, the goddess, kind of otherworldly romantic energy behind this, but it's very intellectual and communicative. Like you could imagine this is like, I'm thinking of a movie and I can't remember. It's with Ethan Hawke, and he's in another country with this woman, and they fall in love in overnight. They sort of just walk around Paris talking, and they fall in love through talking to each other. Now, this has behind it the energy of something very romantic, but also intellectual, communicative, thoughtful, philosophical, as well as looking at what we share or what we don't share with one another in our relationships when it comes to our beliefs. So those are some of the themes I see for you as a Capricorn. Now, at the very end of the month, the full moon in Taurus will involve the sun opposing Mercury, or excuse me, the full moon in Taurus will have the moon conjoined with Uranus in opposition to the sun in Scorpio. And so that's another moment of discovery, epiphany, breakthrough. I feel like Capricorns are on the verge of having also a very, like a month of creative breakthrough. And you're going to find a way of doing something or make a project, but it's going to be also about allowing you to do things differently so that you're not feeling as stressed out. So watch for that. All right, so let's walk it back and we're going to do it over again for Taurus. All right, so put Taurus on the ascendant, and then let me walk it back to the first of the month. So if you are a Taurus rising, the month begins with the full moon in Aries, and the axis that's getting lit up is your 12th, your 6th, and your 9th. Oh, this is really interesting because these are what are called cadent or declining houses. And these houses are very reflective. They were all called metacosmios by the ancient astrologers. You may have heard me mention this word before, which means a world in between worlds. If you're a Taurus, this month is a very kind of liminal space. It's like being in between things. You're waiting for things to happen that have not yet happened but will happen. And you're reflecting upon things that have already happened but that you haven't yet processed. And that's kind of the mood of the month for you if you're a Taurus rising. There's questions about, one thing you could say is that, with a stellium in Capricorn in your 9th house, you're exploring right now the themes of, your beliefs and your convictions have done a lot of growing up over the past couple of years. Ever since Saturn entered Capricorn in 2017, you've been doing a lot of growing up and maturing, and you've been forming deeper commitments spiritually, politically, philosophically, intellectually. You've been growing wiser, finding teachers, and so forth. As you have done so, your ability to cope with the stressors and challenges of life that come up has probably improved a lot. And remember that these energies in the 12th and 6th house this month they're in houses that were traditionally the houses that create difficult interludes in life. Okay, so the 12th house, for example, is associated with women while they're in labor. Okay, the baby hasn't been born. You're no longer pregnant. You're right in the middle trying to deliver this thing, doing this hard work. And it's excruciatingly painful for a lot of women as well as, blissful and exciting. But that's the work of the 12th house is we are birthing out something new, and it's painful and difficult. And what do we do when we face setbacks or long periods of laboring with something? And that's what it feels like to me if you're a Taurus this month, because you've got that Mars retrograde in your 12th. The good news is that you have a backbone that you've developed in the 9th house over the past couple of years that's there for you, or that you need to call on now if you haven't already. It says, here's the mature way of handling this. Here's the mindset. Here's the frame of mind that you need to be in order to get through this. There might be a period of straying or wandering from best practices or principles, or trying to push through something stubbornly when it's not a good idea to persist in things that are going to hurt you or hurt others. It's also a time of exploring anger or frustration or will or aggression or power in relationship to the things that you believe, especially topics like religion or spirituality or philosophy. And also, you are looking for the best way to be peaceful and diplomatic while working through very difficult circumstances or trying times. And that's kind of the mood of the month. But the changes happening, the pressures coming through this month over and over and over again will they'll force you to become more mature or find a way of wielding wielding the right power. How do I act? How do I behave? How do I face limits and difficulties in a way that's constructive, not destructive? But these changes are going to lead to a pretty big shift that's coming in your career, because Jupiter and Saturn are about ready to shift into your 10th house. And it's like the maturing that you've been doing is about to take shape in the world. And that's going to start to happen by the end of this year. So very powerful time. Now, and don't worry if you feel like you're sort of in between laboring with difficult energies, if your health is taking a hit, if your mind feels stressed out, if you feel taxed, draw upon the things that you've learned since 2017, since December of 2017, because there's a lot to call on there. And, you have the resources that you need to make it through this. Now, the other thing that's happening that's so dynamic is there's a couple of oppositions this month from Mercury to Uranus. Let me recap those transits, by the way, this T-square energy, right? So you've got the transits between the 12th, the 9th, and the 6th. Full moon in Aries in the 12th on the 1st. Mars retrograde in the 12th, square Pluto in Capricorn in the 9th on October 9th. The Sun in Libra opposite Mars in Aries across the 6th and the 12th on October 13th. The new moon in Libra in the 6th on October 16th. And let's see, Mars in Aries retrograde square Jupiter in Capricorn in the 9th on October 18th. So the first 20 days of the month, this T-square is just cooking. And then the second transit of the month that we haven't talked about, we're going to dive into now, is Mercury is also opposing Uranus. So Mercury opposes Uranus on October 7th. Then Mercury turns retrograde in your 7th house on October 14th. And then Mercury opposes Uranus on October 19th. So the themes or topics of, what do I want to say? Independence and the need for greater freedom and exploration and individuality are going to be met by the deeper something that's coming up in your relationships this month. Mercury turning retrograde in the marriage house is saying, I need you to pay attention to something, or here's some interesting news or information that's coming to the surface that may not be easy to difficult, or that may not be easy to deal with, that may be difficult on some level, that could be shocking. And may not be, again, could be, the beginning of something that well, I'm beginning, I don't want to say that it's going to last forever, but that by the early part of the month, when Mercury opposes Uranus by, like, say, the 7th, that it's the beginning of a series of revelations that are going to come forth from a partner or related to someone that you know, or that bring a new person into your life, and something is being communicated, and you are changing personally as there is also these revelations occurring. And I use revelations because Mercury retrograde in Scorpio often brings kind of dynamic, hidden information to the surface. And this kind of information would be revealed through intimate relationships, but it has this very transformative effect on you this month. So watch for that. Watch for those Mercury-Uranus dynamics. And that repeats by the end of the month when the full moon in Taurus comes through in your first house and opposes the sun in Scorpio in the 7th house. So there's definitely some action across the relationship axis this month as well. Last but not least, maybe right around the 17th, Venus will oppose Neptune. I'll just see if I can move this along here so you can see it. So you're going to see, Venus opposite Neptune across the 5th and the 11th. This energy, I would say, with Venus in its fall, you want to be a little bit careful. This is the type of energy where you can find yourself, what do I want to say? People could drink too much, spend too much, doing things, have a fling that ends up being far more stressful than it's worth. Be careful of glittery things that grab your attention that look like they'll be very pleasing, but end up being more complicated than they appear. The other thing that I would say is to be careful to avoid the temptations that are coming to you right now from groups of people or friends who are trying to entice you to do something that doesn't quite feel right to you. So those are a few things that come to mind there. It's also a really nice transit when it comes to imagination, creativity, the arts, dance, women, the feminine. So it can be a little bit of a little dreamy, romantic, imaginative energy that's coming through right around the middle of the month on the 17th. You just want to watch it for, Mercury or anything with Neptune can kind of be deceptive and potentially, sort of illusory. So be careful of that. All right, so that's what I've got for you. If you're a Taurus, we are now going to put Virgo on the ascendant, and we're going to wind this up and start over. So if you are a mutable sign this month, you have these energies that we've been discussing playing out across the succedent houses. And that means that what's happening is going to play out in time. The big changes that are happening marked by cardinal signs are very pivotal, but if they're falling in succedent houses, it means that they won't show up right away in your life. It's going to take a little time. Big things are happening that in time will have an even bigger and longer lasting effect. So you can think about that month in a general sense from this standpoint. Now, the focus is on Mars retrograde in your 8th house. The first of the month, you've got of course, full moon in Aries in your 8th house, ruled by that Mars. And then here's how it plays out. You have Mars in the 8th house squaring Pluto in Capricorn in the 5th house by the October 9th. The Sun in Libra in the 2nd will oppose Mars in Aries in the 8th house, and that will happen by the 13th. Then you're going to have a new moon in Libra in the 2nd house by the 16th. Then you're going to have Mars in Aries squaring Jupiter in Capricorn in the 5th house by the 18th. So you're going all the way through, well, almost all the way up to the 20th, you could say, of this month. It's just one transit over after another, 2nd, 8th, 5th, 2nd, 8th, 5th. So what is that axis all about? Well, first of all, the real action from the 2nd to the 8th is financial. My assets, my resources, my time, my energy, my money, my investments, my possessions, the things that I own, the assets that I have, even if they are gifts or internal resources that I have as a person. Those energies this month are also, they're in this very intense conversation with 8th house, the 8th house Mars retrograde in Aries, which is a house that has to do with other people's assets, other people's values, and other people's resources and money and things like that. So these two houses have a lot to do with the balance of the balance and distribution of assets, resources, wealth, power, and so forth in our relationships with others. And they're having, that's the conversations about these kinds of things are going to have a big impact on your month, and what's happening now will be shaping things to come in the future. So when it comes to this month, you're thinking about, what do I owe other people? What debts and obligations do I have to other people? Maybe I want to be free from someone or something that I feel like has been holding me back. Or maybe I want to get free from something, but I can't. Or maybe I owe something to somebody, or maybe someone owes me a debt, or maybe I'm getting clear of some kind of karmic burden or obligation that I have. And so trying to balance the scales there is a big conversation this month. This is a month where you could get much more deeply into debt on any level, emotional, psychological, material, or you could gradually compromise and make wise decisions so that you don't fall in debt to someone, or that you're not indebting a lot of other people to you, both of which are troubling karmically. In the meantime, there are very deep questions happening. All of this is being also prodded by the stellium of planets in Capricorn in the 5th house, which is asking you about first of all, one of the core issues of the 5th house is always about pleasure and about happiness and about whether our lives are enjoyable or not. And so there's very deep and serious questions about pleasure and joy. And for example, I can't tell you how many people I've counseled that are in marriages, right? And they say, I don't want to stay in the relationship because it's a joyless situation. There's no joy, there's no happiness. I'm not happy. Happiness is not something that we're guaranteed. So there's going to be a lot of stretches in life where we're not necessarily unhappy, but we're not really happy either. There's going to be stretches of life where we're unhappy, and there's going to be stretches where we are happy. Right now, I think for Virgos, there is a very deep question about what constitutes real happiness. What is mature? Like, what kind of happiness can you stand on and not feel bad about? What kind of happiness can you prioritize without feeling self-indulgent? What kind of happiness can you prioritize without, feeling like you're living a life that's too dry or rigid? So those questions are also fueling this conversation this month about money, resources, shared assets, distribution of wealth, obligations, and responsibilities that we have to one another, and so forth. And it's a very dynamic month around these kinds of topics. It could also involve the topics of children with the 5th house, or pregnancy, and the kids and their future, what they're dealing with, and possibly also issues around money related to children. That's what I was trying to say. So those are some of the big things. Now, there's also this interesting series of transits happening between Mercury and Uranus this month. Mercury opposes Uranus from your 3rd house in Scorpio to Uranus and Taurus in the 9th house on October 7th. Mercury then turns retrograde in Scorpio on the 14th, and then Mercury opposes Uranus again on the 19th. This is, of course, your ruling planet if you're a Virgo, and so Virgo or Virgo rising. And so one of the things that you could say about this month is that you're going to have some epiphanies. There's nothing better than, Mercury, Uranus across the 3rd and the 9th house to having a change of mind, or to needing to break out of some kind of limiting or confining belief or idea. It could be that it puts you in a little bit more of a rebellious or defiant mood, or that you have to be careful of communication blowups this month. But revelation, speaking your mind, seeing the truth, understanding things that you haven't understood before, receiving information that you hadn't had before, working something out. Even I have a client who's, I just saw, who's Virgo rising. These transits this month that we talked about are going to be playing out as they're negotiating a divorce. So even negotiating things and trying to break free of different situations in our life, work out agreements or arrangements, or communicate with other people so that we can get free of things that we feel are prohibiting us in some way. So that's going to be a big topic this month, is sort of mental breakthroughs, mental and communicative need to be free, to speak our mind, and so forth. It could also be that you're learning something new, or using some new form of technology that is changing your outlook or changing your mind in some way. So it definitely has a bright spot. Mercury-Uranus transits can also be those aha moments where we get ideas that suddenly help us solve a problem that we've been working on for a while. So watch for that again around October 7th. The 14th, Mercury turns retrograde, and then the 19th. Don't be surprised if things come, if you may need to change this month because your outlook on something changes. That's a big one for Virgos. Gemini rising too this month. So that is what I've got for you, for all of you earth signs. I hope you have a really fantastic, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. No, I lied. Let's go back here. I almost concluded without mentioning one transit that is a big deal for Virgos this month. Let me just share my screen again. I forgot one more thing, which is that on the 17th of the month, Venus is entering your home sign as a Virgo this month in its fall, which can be if you're a Virgo, things related to beauty, romance, self-esteem, your aesthetic or your style, as well as your self-esteem could be pronounced. Around the 17th, Venus is going to oppose Neptune across the 1st and the 7th house axis. Really romantic energy there, potentially, coloring your relationships or introducing you to someone new. And it could be a nice little romantic escapade in the middle of the month. You may be prone to not seeing things so clearly. And so you want to be careful of sort of intoxicating illusion energy around the middle of the month in relationships. But also, Venus, Neptune in this particular dynamic could spell some kind of healing or some kind of compassion or generosity or charitableness. I think, for example, of meeting someone who makes you feel better about yourself, who helps you to, gives you that perspective that helps you go, you know what, like I'm okay, or I forgive myself, or I'm someone who affirms or helps you improve your self-esteem in some way. That could be a part of this, because it can be Venus Neptune in this position can be very healing as well. So, but watch for this kind of emotional, romantic energy right around the middle of the month. Don't get swept away by it, and deluded by kind of glittery things like this will solve all your problems, or so you meet someone and an hour later you've decided you're going to get married, or be a little bit careful of that kind of stuff. But otherwise, the middle of the month is kind of a nice, dreamy, soft, very healing energy as well. All right. See, I almost forgot that. See how nice that. Glad I didn't forget it. Okay, so anyway, that's what I've got for you guys, for you earth signs this month. I hope you guys have a really nice month of October. Remember to check out my upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. It starts on November 14th. It's a full year immersion into ancient astrology. You are learning Hellenistic astrology. You're learning how to read charts and read for other people. We have a lot of live clients that come into the classroom. You get to see a live reading, see how it's broken down after you learn all the theory, history, philosophy, and so forth. We have need-based tuition if you are hurting at all, especially because of coronavirus. So check that out on our website, nightlightastrology.com. There's also an early bird rate. You can save $500 off, and a payment plan if you need one. So I hope to see some of you in class soon. Be sure to look at my monthly overview for the month of October on the whole. That's another video resource for you this month. And then I'll be breaking down these transits one by one as we go along. So yeah, tell me how your month goes. Come back, check in on these videos, and leave me some of your stories. I'd love to hear how the transits are affecting you. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.